Now once it reaches that 90% mark, we want to get it out from the sprouting phase into the drying phase, out into the sun and dry. The longer we wait now, the more possibilities you're going to have off flavors because it'll just keep growing. I'll leave a few out. I'll leave a few in the area that it was sprouting, so you'll be able to see things that can go wrong, what to watch out for. But once you start seeing it, that 90% mark, like I said, I take between 8 and 10 berries, and I'll break them open, each one, and I'll be able to see where that shoot is inside the berry. And that 8 to 10 gives you a very good guess mark when to pull it off and put it into the sun, do the drying process. What are the disadvantages of doing it too early? Well, the sugars. If you do it too early, the sugar won't be high enough. So if a recipe calls for 12 pounds of malted barley, you'll probably have to have double that, depending on where that shoot was. If it's a 50%, it might be double. If it's lower than that, it could be more. So we want to make sure and get it as high as we can, no less than 75%, because then it really alters the amount of cost into the brewing process. Now when we're arranging the berries, when they're on the roof for when they're in the drying stage, as we fluff them, we're feeling, we're trying to sense, are they getting drier? Is it too much moisture on the bottom? Is it too much? We get a good feel of kind of what the drying time will be. The roots should start feeling kind of sandy in a way. And so as you're going through them, you'll feel some of them are a little drier, some a little wetter. You want to mix them together very similarly across. And then we need to smell it. What you're smelling for is anything like, let's say, moldy or a little bit of mildewy. As long as it smells fresh, like flour or like toastiness, it's fantastic. If it starts smelling a little different, you might have to spread out the area, make the area a little bigger so that it dries quicker. For me, it's good the size of a car, very, very well for the amount that I do at a time. It seems to work out well for me. Now what I do is I put plastic down for sanitary. Then I usually have a big piece of cardboard that I lay on top. It had some mold on it from last year, so I threw it away. This is my first batch of the year. So I put down this cardboard for today, but just any cardboard will work well. What it's going to do is when you put the berries on top, the moisture is going to seep down into the cardboard. It's going to help it dry better, more evenly. And every hour or so, we'll come out, hour and a half, we'll come out and we'll sift through it, put the bottom on the top to the bottom, rotate it, the sun will see it, it'll dry very nice. So then we put the berries down as evenly as possible. And the things you will need, you'll need the cardboard, plastic to make sure it's all more sanitary, and you will need metal screening, plastic screening, metal screening. And what we do with the screening is we put it on top. It keeps any bugs, birds, anything like that from coming and taking and bothering the berries. Now I've lived in Minnesota and here in southern Europe, in Greece, and in Minnesota, the colder climates, it would take about a day or so for the first drying. Here it's just maybe 6 to 8 hours. So this will work in cold climates and in warm climates. The days may vary. You're going to want a hot enough day, somewhere in the high 70s, 80s. The higher the temperature, the better. It's going to dry quicker, and it won't be as many days. Now you are going to want to have a place that sees the sun for as many hours as possible. So you have an all-day exposure. You can rotate it all day long without having to move it all the time. That's why this location for me is the best. It sees the sun, doesn't matter what time of day it is, and it works very well. Now as the berries are drying, what's happening is they're shrinking. The sugars now are being pulled back into the berry because the roots are withering. They're withering back, and all the sugar now is being contained inside the berries. The berries now want to shoot, but they can't because they're drying. They'll stop growing. So as long as your berries didn't reach beyond the outside of the shell of the berry, and I have a couple examples I left for a couple days ago, so you'll be able to see how far is too far. You'll see that they turn green. Those you don't want. You've malted, I should say malted, you've let it go for too long, and it's something to watch out for. Once you start seeing some of those appear, you want to get it out as soon as possible. So everything now is just going to dry very evenly. We'll come out and rotate it, and we'll be fine. See how these look? See how these are dry? You can just see the roots. See how dry they're starting to curl, and this is just a few hours out in the sun now. And it's really, you can just tell it's turning brownish. And see how they're all drying up? That's what we want. We want them to get nice and dry, just like that. And they're not quite crispy yet. They'll end up being a little crispy by the end of the day. It's usually the second day that they get the most crispy. We need these to get down to like between 20 to 12%. So, how do we know what process we're at? Well, what do we have here now? This is pretty dry. It's still the first day. So what we have here is we actually have our base malt. If you go in the store, this is what it would be, base malt. It still has all the sugars. It's dry. It's not quite dry enough at this point to be considered base malt, but it's dry enough. The roots are not quite falling off. They're just getting dry. This is the point when they first start getting dry, and if you taste it, it's a little crunchy, but still soft inside. Not really soft, more like wet. This is the point when we have to move it to a different stage. If we want to make sugar malts at different toasts, this is the time when we would do that. The reason is because we want the berries to be somewhat wet when we toast it, because the sugars, when you make beer, you have different temperatures at which you pull out different extractions of sugars. If we let this go and let it dry all the way through, the sugars will be locked in there. They won't caramelize. So what we do is, since they're still wet, what we do is we actually toast it while it's still wet. And what happens is the sugars then are still moist and they come to the surface because of the heat. And then what they do is the sugars are locked in, and it takes that sugar and makes it caramelized. And then we bring it back out to dry the rest of the way. That caramelization I'll show you in a little bit. But that part is where when you make your beer, that's the sugars that are left in the beer. So it's the sweetness of the beer. There are many websites to how to make beer, but that's basically the essence. Is you have two different kinds of sugars. You have the sugars that make alcohol, and you have the sugars that stay in the beer that give you the body, and that give you the mouthfeel, the big mouthfeel at the end of the beer. Those sugars don't go away, so those are kind of more calorie beers, of course. So like I said, when you get to the point where they're somewhat dry, but the inside it's a little crunchy, but the inside is still wet, you can still feel the moisture, that's the point when we would take it to do the malts. That's excellent. So what are we doing now? Well, we've rotated, we've fluffed up the berries, made sure that they're not sitting only on the bottom, they're rotating them up, let the sun see them. And you can actually hear the berries getting dry. When you feel them, you can see that the roots themselves, look, you can see how they're getting very dry and like prickly. You can feel it. It's not quite there yet. You can taste it. You hear that crunch? You get a little bit of crunch, but you still get that softness inside. It's still not ready. That's about 20%. It's pretty good. Can taste that bit. Can taste the flavor of the berry. It's not toast or anything, but you get that pale malty flavor. Still a little bit. That's what I want to use, like floury. But as it dries, it'll get harder, and you'll know exactly what it is when you can bite into it. It's just nothing but crunchy all the way through, but yet soft enough to get through. But it gets nice and crunchy. Actually, I can taste a little sweetness too, so everything's going well. Now, someone may ask, how much can we do? How much malt can a person make? Well, I've actually made one 50 kilo bag. So in the States, that'd probably be almost, I suppose, a little less than 100 pounds, about 90 pounds, I suppose, at one time. You just need bigger things, right? You just need a bigger bucket to put the barley in to soak. You need a bigger table to lay it out. You need a bigger tarp. And then for the drying phase, what I do is I had a huge piece, a couple refrigerator cardboard boxes from the appliance store, and I laid those down on the ground, and then I put all the barley on top of that, and a couple really big screens, and it went perfectly. So the smaller you can do, it's a little bit more easy to handle. The bigger, of course, you do massive quantities. You can do production quantities. I'm sure this is what they did in the olden days. So yeah, for the amount, it's how much is you're able to, how much you want. There's a disadvantage to doing malt one big batch, and that is storage. If you do small batches at a time and then you cook it right away, you get the freshest product. So really, you're better off making smaller batches and then roasting them, using them within a few weeks to a few months, and then you get the freshest product, which is what you're looking for. If you live in a place that it gets cold much time of the year, a lot of the time of the year, you may want to do the full batch, get it done during a few nice days that you have, and then you have it for the year. But depending on your location, it's up to you. So I hope you can see how dry some of this is, and I'm gonna kind of see. Actually, did you see that? It actually pulled the roots start to fall right off. I can see how they fell right off. Here they are, right there. You can see them. I just twist a little bit, and they fall right off. This one's not quite dry enough. This one didn't. But you can see how it just peeled right off. That's how you know it's getting very dry. You see how all these? I'm just going to rotate it like this, and see now I have all those roots off. So they pulled right off. That's a very good sign. That's telling you that it's drying really well. So this is probably maybe now. I mean, look at it. You can see you see how the roots are just falling right off. This is getting close to the about 8% mark now. From the 8% mark to about the 2% mark, which is really our goal. It takes a little bit. This is when it takes about the longest time. Look at that. Just like that. A few hours and bang, it's dries. Now the malt is very dry. It's as you saw, when you put it through your fingers, you can see that it just kind of breaks apart. Not all of it, but a lot of it. See how it's breaking apart? Okay, so this is a step when this is actually malt. This is what they would consider base malt. And the sugar's already locked in there because of the drying. We're a little bit further down the road than we were when we were making sugar malts. So it's a little bit drier. Now I bite into it, so it's quite a bit harder. And you can actually taste, it's not that it is toasted, but the sun actually dries it enough to where you get a nice nutty flavor, like you would expect. Once the roots start falling off like this very easily, this is when we can start taking it off and make other kind of malts as well. Still a little early for base malt. It has to be pretty dry to start with your base malts. But your sugar malts or your high toasted malts can be used at this stage. And probably by the end of the day, it'll be dry enough to where it just crumbles. And that's when you know, and you bite into it, and it's hard, but inside you still don't get that, there's no softness to the berry. And some of these are getting very close. And you get to where everything is very hard and crunchy, and you can start tasting the flavors of the beer in the berries, then you know you're at that point. There's another test, which I'll show you a little later, and that's when you take a screen, and the screens that you use to put on top are now used to take off the roots. And when that happens, at the end of the day, I'll do that and show you. We put that down and we just basically just rotate, but as we rotate it, we're moving it around in circles. And what that does is that ends up connecting the root to the bottom, and it just makes all the roots fall right off. So now we don't have to go through the process of derooting anything. It's all completely clear. The roots will fall through the screens and on the bottom of the cardboard, and you just pick it up from the screen, and you just shake it out, and all the roots will fall off, and then all you'll be left with is a beautiful malted barley. Not sure if you see this. You can see on the bottom. You see all these roots. It looks almost like toast, right? Toast crust. You can see. Look at all the. I haven't done anything. I just pulled it off the cardboard. You can actually see this here? These are all roots, old roots that have fallen off. And this is the time when you have to, everything is done, and it's time to take off the roots. See, I'm just doing this, and it just falls apart. I actually have to kind of hurry because it's going to rain. So what you do is, when I throw these berries on top, what I do is I just do this, just rotate them. And by rotating them in like a circle pattern, all the roots go into the screen, and all you'll have left is the berry. Now if I lift this up, you can see all these are just the roots, and so it just pulls right off very quickly. Let me give you some closing thoughts. How big of batches should you make? Well, I would split your whatever volume you get. If it's a full sack, if it's 50 pounds, 50 kilos, whatever you buy, 18. I'd divide it in 4. And the reason I would do that is you could do the whole thing at one time. But if you do it in 4 different batches, the first batch, when you do it, you're going to find that you're going to be a little nervous. You're not really going to feel the process. You're going to kind of be in a hurry. You're going to go back and forth between watching these videos and doing it yourself, trying to figure things through. So that first time is going to be, things will be a little hectic. So you want that batch to be kind of small. So if mistakes are made, you learn from them. You throw away just a small portion of what you bought, and you do the second batch. If it went well, you're able to relax that second time. So then you take the next batch and you do that one. This time you're more enjoying the process. So you notice more things. You're able to just take your time. You're not worried. You know kind of what to watch out for. You're already prepared. You have all your stuff. It'll work. That one will go very